I mean, this is ridiculous, right? But male disposability is male exploitation, the exploitation of men. In war, in the economy, in relationships. Male disposability is the prerequisite for the exploitation of men. Viewing males as society-serving empty robots, as appliances, as revenue generators. That is the essence of what is crippling and destroying the modern world. In education, boys are basically viewed as broken girls. If only we could get the boys to be more like the girls. Wouldn't that be great? Well, not really. The idea that men have an inner value to their own existence and their own experience, and therefore must be negotiated with from a position of mutual respect, is incomprehensible to people. And it's not even incomprehensible like an admitted topic that people won't process. It's not even an admitted topic. You know, you go to some anti-Semitic jerk and you say, you know, Jews are equal or Jews are great. It's incomprehensible to him because he's anti-Semitic. But at least he recognizes the question. The question, what do men want, is not even a question. Everybody obsesses about what women want. Oh, try and plumb what women want. Try and plumb the desert. And Freud turned himself into a Gordian knot, lower intestine, map of the subway system in London, pretzel, into trying to figure this problem out. Who tries to figure out what men want? What do boys want? And you write about this like Christina Hoff Sommers does, or in the War Against Boys or anything. People, I mean, it sinks. It's like throwing a giant boulder into a tiny pond and having it disappear without a ripple. And it's always blaming the victim. The boys' emotional lives are ignored, downgraded, mocked, rejected, scorned, bullied. And then it's the men's fault that they lack the capacity for emotional expression when they get older. Men are deficient because they were victimized as children. It's like looking at a female victim of incest, of rape, child rape. She's just got some weird sexual hang-ups. Except the prevalence of female child rape is far less than the prevalence of the sole murder of boys through the glacial Easter Island face masks of universal indifference to their experiences. And write to me, operations@freedomainradio.com. Write to me and tell me that I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong about that. I would love for my childhood to be the exception. I mean, it was the exception. I mean, I had a rough childhood even by contemporary standards, but I think that this fundamental indifference to the emotional life of boys, look, is universal. But tell me, write to me, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me about all the great mentors you had who helped to teach you about yourself. Men have a great inability to express their emotions. Yeah, that's why male poets are so powerful. Because the men who do survive with some capacity for emotional expression intact write the most glorious emotional poetry in the known universe. Passionate, deep, intense. The thought fox. Any of the sonnets. Funny, witty, passionate, deep. Tell me men have no capacity for emotional self-expression. And a woman cries and everybody rushes to give her what she wants, and a man cries and everybody scorns and looks away, embarrassed. Fuck you, world. Fuck your double standards. Fuck your icebox refrigeration of boys' hearts and then tapping them with the endless chisel and hammer of personalized, condemnatory criticism when those boys grow up cold after having been frozen by culture their entire boyhoods. The idea from authority figures, parents, priests, and teachers, that we would inquire and pursue the inner life of boys, it's not even on the table as something which might possibly be something worth exploring at some point in the future. The neutron bomb that goes off in the world of boys, that irradiates and kills their hearts, is such a universal phenomenon that it doesn't even show up on the radar of things that happen in the world. The emotional abuse of boys, and neglect is the most powerful and destructive and long-lasting form of abuse, scientifically, statistically. The universal emotional neglect and abuse of boys is so foundational to our society that it is genuinely impossible to imagine a society where this did not occur. We no more talk of changing this than we discuss using the political system to repeal gravity. You repeal gravity, the entire structure of human life flies apart. All the buildings, the dams, everything. The skyscrapers literally become skyscrapers, floating around the clouds like rolling pins in high surf. We no more think of warming our hearts towards the warm hearts of boys than we do of imagining that we can change the position of the sun by twisting the dials on our clocks. To suggest it is insane. To imagine it's occurring is deranged. We are that far from the emancipation of isolation of the human male child. It is the warm hearts of men that will recoil from the brutality of our societies. It is the warm hearts of men that will recoil and rage against senseless wars and imprisonments and the initiation of force against the peaceful. We raise men cold, frozen, brutalized through the cold Medusa eyes of indifference. And then you see we complain that the hierarchy, the patriarchy of men is not very nice. You reap what you sow. If you do not open your heart to the tender and passionate inner lives of boys, you freeze them up in a tomb that will swallow you all. You understand? You turn away from boys, and they will reach around and drag down the future and you with it. Spurned and abused childhood always has its vengeance. There is no escape from evil in this or any other world. A cold and brutal attitude towards boys will have its consequence. We can no more escape the inevitable backlash of brutalizing children than we can escape the ill health effects of smoking, or the squishy splat if we jump from a bridge. The things we set in motion through the indifference to the inner lives of boys is a horrible machinery that eats men and women, boys and girls, rich and poor, eventually equally. When we turn the potentially compassionate negotiation potential of boys into cold-eyed, hard-fisted dominance matrices, win, lose, win, lose, win, lose, fight, die! well, they rule over us. They become politicians. They become greasy, sweaty preachers. They become the petty sadists of vice principals. They become the outward sadists of killbot soldiers. They become the cop who pulls you over and harasses you. They become the man who beats you. And the solution has to come from women. Men are so generally crippled. I mean, for two reasons. One, men are generally so crippled by the interstellar emotional isolation that they experience as children that to expect most men to reach out in any kind of compassionate way is really asking the impossible. It's like asking somebody who's been mauled 30 times by lions to become a lion tamer. I mean, it's not going to happen. They'll be too screwed up by it. So that's the first reason. The second reason, of course, is that women shape men. Women dominate the boyhood of men. Patriarchy, fucking insane. Think of your first 5 or 7 years of life. It was all women all the time, with all authority. And maybe a sort of a distant kind of vice principals talk in the hallways kind of thing, but it was all women all the time. I was the only guy in the daycare I worked in, among dozens of women. And boy, oh boy, did those boys flock to me. Naturally, hungry for any kind of male attention. Women have to solve this. And women have largely created it. Stay-at-home moms who are annoyed by their boys, who don't ask their boys why, what, and how they feel, who don't sit down in patient time under slow-moving stars to inquire as to the source and genesis and movements of their boys' minds and hearts, who patiently learn to help them explore and teach them to help them explore why they think, what they think, how they think, why they feel, what they feel, how they feel. All the moms who are too busy for that because, you know, hey, floor's got to be mopped. Shit's got to be clean. Kids got to be isolated. Well, the moms who leave their boys isolated, who don't reach out of resentment, right? Who don't reach out of compassion and say that men are the way they are because women don't teach them to learn about themselves. The root of male disposability is female indifference. Lack of female respect, lack of female curiosity, female contempt. Because men are appliances that generally don't work the way that women want them to, so they must be banged and ignored and insulted and so often attacked. You know, why is the majority of domestic violence disputes initiated by women? Because men are supposed to provide X, Y, and Z, regardless of how they feel, regardless of what they want. That's why male suicidality is so high. Isolation. Isolation, isolation. We live for each other, not for the world, and if there is no other, the world is just a slow-walking, dusty tomb. Women gotta fix what they broke. And until they do, male disposability will ensure the disposability of the entire world.